Hello again, it's Ryan Miller with Etna Interactive, and we're going to talk today specifically to our medical device partners and newsletter subscribers and those in the pharmaceutical industry about some trends for 2014 at the most popular of search engines. Specifically, we're drawing inspiration from and looking at Google. We'll talk about how those trends may impact and may create some opportunities specifically for medical device and pharmaceutical companies. So three specific things come up where search trends really do spell opportunity. I think the first thing is that we are seeing search results inside of search results, and we'll talk about what that means and where that presents opportunity for the medical space. We see a lot of content marketing happening. In fact, it's a buzzword. It's very popular right now. And there are both opportunities for medical device and pharmaceutical companies to capitalize on this opportunity directly, but also to leverage their relationships directly with medical practices to benefit their devices, their products, and their brands. An online reputation where, maybe for the last year and a half to 2 years, this has been a very hot topic with doctors themselves. It's actually becoming something that's increasingly important for industry players, for companies to be aware of and protecting and being aware of their brand. So the first thing we talked about was how search results were now showing up in search results. And I'll give you some examples here in just a second. But specifically, when I search using a local keyword, I'll use the example of Boston here in a moment, and I pair that with a brand name, very often what we're finding is optimized results from branded sites are showing up on the first page of Google. So let me dive in and be really specific here. In this particular case, I'm looking at Radius in Boston was the keyword that I searched. And in that second position, I see the brand site showing up. I see that taking prominent real estate. Now why is that important and how did that happen? Now, if you think about it, in the absence of a manufacturer holding regional first page placements, what ends up on the first page, well, I'll show you an example in a second, are third-party sites, directories, and then I think this is something that we can feel good about. Also, those medical practices who have the device or the pharmaceuticals occupy the majority of the first page. Now, for brands, that means that your destiny, the way in which regional distribution happens, is completely outside of your control. So I'll use as a contrast with this, I did a search for cellulase in Boston, and we see Real Self, we see Yelp, we see a couple of other major national sites, in addition to local players, local practices coming up. And the cellulase corporate site, their brand site, is halfway down the second page. So for all intents and purposes on Google, they're more or less invisible. And when we compare and contrast those two, we have to ask, well, why is it that there is this difference? Well, on the Radius site, they have a optimized doctor locator. They have pages that feed the search engine the content they're looking for. In this particular case, if you look closely, you'll see this is a search engine friendly page that has the keyword Radius on it. It has reference to Boston specifically. Search engines can find that content. As we compare that to Cellulase, their doctor locator is not optimized, and the only way that I can gain access to that content is by entering in this particular case, a zip code or a city name, and unfortunately search engines can't do that. They can't put data in and click a button to submit. They have to be able to click simply following standard hypertext links to jump from one page of a website to the next. So Cellulase has effectively locked away their regional data, and it's preventing them from holding regional rankings. And I would argue that today it is in a brand's best interest to have prominent placement for branded local searches so that in many ways you can control where your potential customers are going and use your locator to route them to your most prominent, your most successful practices. So really our advice here is to work in the new year to grab page one placement specifically for your branded searches. And this is actually for most device manufacturers, this is going to be, or pharmaceutical companies, this is going to be a simple matter of deploying a search engine friendly locator. Now, the second thing here that we had noticed in terms of trends for 2014 is that, well, the idea of content marketing is becoming a huge thing. We've always said, as it relates to search engine optimization, there's been a saying in the industry that content is king, because search engines rank content. They don't necessarily rank sites. So medical practices, we know, are hungry for assets to support their content marketing strategies. And let me give you a couple of examples here where we see, this is from the Wall Center for Plastic Surgery. Just off the lower edge of the page, we see 2 sets of before and after photos on their Facebook post. This is actually specifically for their Jade Medi Spa, where they're leveraging photos that were provided by the manufacturer to promote some non-surgical device and pharmaceutical related services. The Piazza Center here offering video related to Hydrofacial MD. And again, the video wasn't a video they produced. It was an asset that came from their device partner, in this particular case, this being on their blog. So practices today are increasingly leveraging their blogs, social media, news and updates posts on their site, as well as newsletters directly to clients to keep people informed and connected with the practice, and to drive demand for devices and pharmaceutical products. Well, they need that content. They need a source of that information. And in large part, practices today don't have the time, in many cases don't have the ability to generate that original content. And it's the partners who give them content to use whose products get promoted on all of those outlets. And very interestingly, we work with a lot of device manufacturers and pharmaceutical companies. We see the difference in traffic. And as a general rule, any 10 of your physician clients are going to have roughly the same amount of traffic as your branded corporate site. So leveraging those client relationships, helping your clients to provide content to their audience is going to give you much more bang for your buck than engaging in your own content strategy. So that said, I want to be clear, I am actually recommending that you have your own internal content marketing strategy as well, but support your partners at the same time. There's a woman named Ann Handley. She's written a great book on content marketing in particular. I'm referencing here a link that you can click straight from this video to read an article on entrepreneur.com. But if I distill this idea down, I think there are 3 things in there that I would recommend for 2014. Is first and foremost, designate a brand journalist. I think this isn't necessarily meaning run out and hire somebody, but find that person in your organization who can be responsible for generating new content, for telling the story of your brand and distributing it, whether that's directly through your own direct-to-consumer marketing channels or by providing content to those providers who have your products. You need somebody whose responsibility this is if you expect it to be done on a regular basis. And if you think about it, more often than not, what we see is one e-media is produced at one point in time, and not until there's a major brand refresh do you often provide your partners, your clients, with new content. And so this is a change in strategy, which is really about you having a regular set of stories and content. That content may be images or videos that you're developing and that you're distributing. And as I mentioned here, it's that story that matters. So the second trend related to content marketing is focusing on the relevance of the story of how your product fits into a patient's life. How does it benefit them? How is it making their life better? And focus your content strategy on what's going to be relevant, interesting to that end user consumer, whether that be the physician whose practice you're helping to grow and profit, or the patient that you're helping directly. So look at content marketing from the eyes of your end user, the group that will be consuming your content. And then finally, look at deploying campaigns that capitalize on community. Now, this is a tough one. Depending on what country you're in and whether you are on the medical device or pharmaceutical side of things, there's a significant number of restrictions about what might need to be addressed. Let's say if there were complications that were shared in an open format. So a lot of companies shy away from social media. It's why I've used the language to capitalize on community, because community can be found today in many places online. Community comes in the form not only of a corporation's own blog and social media pages, but those that are maintained by the physicians and clinics who use their products. Communities can be built And we see communities on third-party sites like RealSelf, where there are active discussions that are happening about a brand. So taking time to look at those and create opportunities to distribute new content that ultimately can benefit you and your brands. So the third prediction that we have, and really here this is I'm moving into kind of predictive territory. This is maybe a little bit less about advice and more about what's changing, what's happening. Online reputation, we believe, is going to increasingly impact major brands. Now, it's worth noting that online reputation, specifically physician ratings and reviews, have been a hot topic for almost 2 years now. Many doctors are really struggling with the notion that patients can anonymously share their feelings, often about the doctor of practice, even though they've never been treated by that location. And so this is a challenging topic, and I think it might be even more challenging for our partners in the medical device and pharmaceutical space. But let's talk about it for a second. This is an example here. I'd used the example earlier, cellulase, so kind of just arbitrarily I've picked them as well, and grabbed a snapshot of content specifically taken about cellulase from this website, realself.com. And they have kind of a consumer satisfaction rating system built into the site that I think most of you are probably very well aware of. Well, interestingly, what we see happening here is someone who early on had some complaints, some concerns about how they were perceiving their treatment immediately afterwards. But if you follow the evolution of their story, and you'll note there that you'll see that there were 200 responses to this particular post. We're talking about very significant visibility where consumers are rating and sharing about their procedures. It goes from being a story where, initially the patient was, perhaps because they didn't know what to expect immediately following their procedure, voicing concerns, ultimately through sharing additional photos, sharing that they're seeing their difference, and moving to the place of being in tears and being elated with their outcome, and really building and sharing a compelling, authentic, and rather exciting story about this, this particular product. So when we look at this, we have to acknowledge the fact that with some recent changes at Google, sites like RealSelf are eminently visible today. If you search just about any question related to your brand, you're going to find a site like RealSelf coming up on the first page of Google. So these consumer ratings and reviews are incredibly and increasingly visible and influential today. So I have some predictions that are probably going to extend beyond 2014 that I'll share. And ultimately, I think it's something that you need to decide how this fits into your overall strategy and legally and ethically how it can. I think that the notions that are perhaps older notions of both patient selection and managing consumer expectations are likely to become a bigger part of conversations between device manufacturers, pharmaceutical companies, and their physician clients. Because increasingly, as we do an evaluation of, for example, those stories, those reviews that are shared on sites like RealSelf, we see that very often the concerns and the complaints that are shared relate to managing expectations. Patients were allowed to receive treatment and leave the practice without really understanding, perhaps really having received an adequate description of what the period immediately following treatment would be like, and when and how much of a result to expect. So a lot of the complaints that we're seeing are falling into those lines. And manufacturers that are going to want to control how patients are feeling and perceiving post-treatment are really going to want to focus conversations with the physicians that are buying their products around making sure they choose the right patients for treatment and that they manage expectations carefully. I do believe that not only will RealSelf's visibility continue to increase, I think it's going to dominate our market for all of 2014 in the area of brand reputation reviews, but I do think we're going to see a proliferation of locations where this is going to be happening as well. So RealSelf's popularity is already driving some imitators. We also see things like major industry magazines who are now opening up blog posts and areas of their site to discussions about the efficacy and satisfaction with branded products. Finally, I think that if I'm going to predict what is going to be the thing that's going to allow manufacturers, above and beyond making a great product, of course, that's going to allow a manufacturer to influence and control their reputation, well, ultimately it's so highly dependent on the doctor and or the provider who is administering treatment, that it's really, I think, going to be those organizations who are focused on a really effective initial deployment of their product in an office, supported by ongoing training and clinical education. I think those are going to be the devices that are going to be in a position to, and the products are going to be in a position to hold and protect their reputation, again, kind of indirectly through the physicians that are applying the product. So, finally here, I think that this whole notion of reputation is something that is going to be a difficult thing for medical device manufacturers and pharma companies, and it's something that you'll need to be very aware of. So as we sum up and we kind of talk about what's happening in 2014, I think there's some specific trends that are open to industry to really capitalize upon. I think grabbing page one rankings so that you control more of your destiny. You hold more of the traffic related to your brand, and you can, through your locators, guide those patients to your brand loyalists. At the same time, I think that content marketing is going to heat up, and the brands who are providing the best content are going to get the best exposure, and as a result, I think the best sales as well, sort of indirectly, largely through the clinics that they are partnered with. And then finally, I think conversations about brand reputation online are really going to heat up, and we're going to see, I think, a large number of industry players focus on patient selection, on managing expectations, and a whole lot on training and practice development. So that said, if you do want to learn more and you're not already subscribed to our partner newsletter, you can follow the link on your screen and subscribe to our partner news, and of course, follow us on Facebook. So that said, well, thank you for watching today, and keep your eye open for our next partner newsletter.